Hello, I'm Anna, and my presentation is going to be about the higher education in the United Kingdom. So, I will begin to clarify the concept of higher education. It is the third level of education. It comes after the secondary school and usually takes place at universities. The framework of higher education qualifications refer mainly to the levels 4 to 8 and three first levels, 4 to 6, refer to undergraduate courses, and the last two are postgraduate, 7 to 8. Scotland has a different framework for higher education qualifications, which has six framework levels, 7 to 12, four for undergraduates, and two for postgraduates. First degree courses, also known as bachelor's degrees with honours, typically have the duration of 3 years in England, Wales, and Northern Ireland, but 4 years in Scotland. Besides bachelor's degrees, other qualifications include higher national certificates, higher national diplomas, foundation degrees, certificates, and other academic awards granted by a university or higher education college, and lastly, postgraduate diplomas, master's degrees, and doctoral degrees. In this context, university and colleges are not synonyms, as happens in the United States, because in the United Kingdom, a college is a further education institution that prepares its students to earn degrees, while a university is a licensed higher education institution that attributes degrees to students at the end of their studies. Higher education in the United Kingdom is currently provided by diverse organizations, most of which have the university title. However, in order to be labeled as an university, this institution must meet certain criteria. They must be either be approved by the Privy Council or under the Further and Higher Education Act 1992 or under the provisions of the Companies Act 2006. There are also many listed bodies, institutions that cannot award their own degrees, but provide full courses that lead to institutions with powers to award degrees. So, regarding the history, higher education began in the United Kingdom with the establishment in the 11th century of the University of Oxford, which is the oldest university in the English-speaking world, followed by the University of Cambridge, which was inaugurated in the beginning of the 13th century. The universities of Oxford and Cambridge had the support of the king and pope, so they remained the only universities in England, despite several attempts in other towns to establish more universities. Scotland, on the contrary, had three universities, founded in the 15th century by papal bull, and in the 16th century the Crown granted the royal charter to the University of Edinburgh. Oxford and Cambridge developed in a more independent way than most continental universities because they elected their own chancellors and acquired healthy colleges, which also provided them wealth. And the fall of the monasteries during the reign of Henry VIII benefited them in terms of wealth, but that led to a change of functions because um, the teaching of canon law was banned. So they concentrated their teaching in arts, theology to the Anglican clergy, and in the training of manners and political awareness for sons of the nobility and the wealthier middle classes. As stated by Perkins, in England the universities adapted themselves to a new social function, which was the general education of the ruling elite. In the 19th century, higher education expanded significantly, with St David's College, Lampeter Durham University, King's College, and University College London being granted royal charters. And in the second half of the century, medical science and engineering colleges were founded in England's major industrial cities, which eventually merged and became the red brick universities of Manchester, Leeds, Bristol, Sheffield, Liverpool, Nottingham, and Birmingham. Furthermore, there was the creation of technical colleges, research institutes, and modern research universities, which combined both teaching and research instead of just conserving the traditional knowledge, which was an innovation at the time. These new universities followed the Scottish model of a professor for each subject instead of a regent master who taught the whole syllabus, which this system was more used in Oxbridge. In the decades of 1950s and 60s, the British government decided to expand the higher education system to respond to the needs of the expanding population and increasingly technological economy. So, new colleges of advanced technology were established and later received university status, and additionally, other 13 former university colleges gained university status, and new universities were created, such as Essex, Warwick, and York. Afterwards, in 1992, the Further and Higher Education Act granted university status to more than 35 former polytechnics and to other institutions, particularly colleges of higher and further education. There was also a threefold increase in the number of universities between the period of 1960 and 2000. Accordingly, the number of students also underwent a significant increase of over 4 times more in that period of time. This meant a transition from elite to mass and later universal higher education, alongside a shift from aristocratic to meritocratic society. And between 2001 and 2013, 31 universities were created, which are collectively known as the post 92 or modern universities. Education is a devolved issue, so higher education policy is developed separately in each of the countries that make up the United Kingdom, which leads to some differences in the education system in England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland, including differences between the fee systems of the countries and also regarding the different frameworks, as I've already mentioned. For this reason, undergraduate courses in the university are free in Scotland for home students, which included students who lived in Scotland and in the European Union, but not for students from the rest of the United Kingdom, who still must pay fees. And of course, as a result of Brexit, the UK government EU students can no longer are not longer eligible for support or nor the home fee status in Scotland. Higher education institutions in the United Kingdom are not owned or managed by the government. They have independence and legal autonomy. And the funding councils for England, Scotland, and Wales provide independent financial support and general guidance to public funded institutions without the government influencing them or vice versa, with a hands off approach. Northern Ireland universities receive funding directly from the government through the Department for Employment and Learning in Northern Ireland. So, the majority of the higher education institutions are partially state and privately financed, with tuition fees or tuition fee loans, and top up or differential fees to cover the costs. Tuition fees were only introduced in 1997 because the number of students increased exponentially, and state funding did not increase proportionally to that rise. In the next years, the maximum fee, or fee cap, was increased a few times for England, Wales, and Northern Ireland. And the current fee cap in England and Scotland, except for home students, is up to £9,250 and £9,000 in Wales. In Northern Ireland, fee cap for Northern Irish students is £4,395, so it really depends on the country. Funding for students has shifted from income support transfers to student loans. So students can take loans that cover the whole of the fee through the student loans company and repay them after the graduation once the former student has exceeded a determined earnings threshold. Out of all higher education institutions, 9 are privately owned. And these privately owned institutions receive no funding from government for teaching or research, but can access funding via the student loans company. There are also alternative providers who are private providers that do not receive recurrent funding from HEFCE or equivalent bodies, do not receive direct recurrent public funding, nor are a further education college, but can access student loan funding and grants for individually designated courses. Despite the decline in public funding, there has been a significant increase in government control through regulation and compliance requirements, through assessing teaching and research performances, through periodic subject reviews and research excellence framework. Public agencies also make comparative assessments of institutional performance, which leads to a hierarchy based on measured performance, which also helps to differentiate higher education institutions within the market. The United Kingdom has mission groups, which refer to a collection of universities who share similar origins, values, and ambitions. Missions. The most well-known is Russell Group, which is a network of 24 British public research universities that contain some of the most prestigious universities of the United Kingdom, including the University of Oxford and of Cambridge, of course, alongside with the original 6 red brick universities and others. University Alliance is a diverse collection of institutions, amongst whom were the more state-conscious post-92 universities, typically in cities outside London and Bolton. This group is characterized by engaging more with business and employ a practical and hands-on methodology and access to real-world experience. Not that the others don't provide that, but they characterize themselves for this. Million Plus, which is the Association for Modern University, groups together most of the big city post 92 universities as well, and is committed to an access friendly ethos and vocational orientation. They describe themselves as public policy think tank made up of universities. Guild HE is a member organization that represents particularly institutions that specialize in arts and design, teacher training, agriculture, music, and drama. And lastly, the Cathedrals Group is the only group of universities and colleges which is united by ethics and faith. It specializes in arts, humanities, and social sciences, and is particularly focused on public sector training and a high quality education with personal and spiritual development, because they firmly believe that education should be for the whole person. Um, a hierarchy emerged in the development of the English higher education system, with Oxford and Cambridge dominating the sector for centuries. And this dominance, although not actively imposed, was arguably positively encouraged by the state. Oxbridge were the only English universities which maintained a close relationship with the national elites, particularly with the Church of England, but also with political, social, and cultural elites. This association with the elite led to an unmatchable level of authority, independent wealth, and a weight of tradition, which allowed Oxbridge to retain its special status even when other universities surged. It could be reasoned that this hegemony represents the dominance of of an aristocratic ideal, and that UK's obsession with Oxford and Cambridge is cultural, such as the obsession with the royal family. Uh, and this is helped by the national media because more than half of Britain's leading journalists attended Oxbridge. So each institution has its own entry requirements and admission procedures. Most applications to full-time undergraduate courses are made through the Universities and College Admission Service, UCAS, and they also set an online postgraduate application service, UCPAS, but most applications are still made directly to the university or college in question. Students apply to the universities. Um, they choose maximum five before they sit their exams. So, universities make offers partially based on predicted grades. So, grades that were predicted by the applicant's school or college according to the result they believe students are likely to achieve. Furthermore, well, the accuracy of these predicted grades is debatable, as only 1 in 6 applicants achieve the predicted grade, and also the teachers and advisors may be partial to biases. And in fact, research shows that Black students and students from disadvantaged backgrounds are often under-predicted, and this has huge consequences because it prevents them from getting offers. And some years ago, many Oxford and Cambridge College did not admit any Black A level students, and only a small percentage of new students belonged to state schools. And this led to accusations to Oxford and Cambridge of practicing social apartheid. However, meanwhile, measures were taken to improve these results by funding bursaries and summer schools for disadvantaged children and creating new programs, which had very positive effects, but there is still a lot of work to do. To conclude, I would just like to mention that because of this high competition, this is a valid market, right? Most higher education institutions are redirecting their courses toward offers more employability prospects. So they are taking into account business. And even Oxford and Cambridge are innovating themselves in this sense. Higher education institutions are also predicted to become more diverse, inclusive, and it is argued that most universities, not all, will become more Americanized, less personal due to the high number of students. Despite these eventual changes, the British higher education is characterized by remaining consistent in their values and institutional autonomy. So, this was my presentation. Thank you for your time.